We're going to talk about the press conference that Donald Trump just gave at Mar-a-Lago. He was uh, extremely forceful in doubling down on his positions that he's already taken before. There wasn't a lot of new information, so to speak, in his speech, but he definitely doubled down on his positions. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why Trump does this sort of thing where he makes these really outlandish positions. The best part of the whole press conference was where Trump said that he was going to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. I'm sure that there are leaders from around the world who are running around with their hair on fire trying to figure out what they're going to do about this new president if he actually tries to accomplish the things he says he's going to accomplish. Now, I would bet my retirement plan that during the next 4 years, Donald Trump will not take over Greenland, retake the Panama Canal, or rename the Gulf of Mexico. However, there's something that Trump is really, really good at. I think that there's a real genius to his craziness. And I want to talk a little bit about that, just frame the debate. What I really want to talk about is Trump's assertion that all hell will break out if the Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad do not release the hostages by the time Trump gets into office on the 20th of January. There's a name for the way that Trump negotiates. It's called anchoring. I think in Trump's case, we could safely call it extreme anchoring. Let me explain what that is. When somebody goes into a negotiation, there's an expectation by the buyer and the seller. Well, Trump's forte throughout his career has been in framing the negotiation differently by anchoring it outside of the expected norms. This extreme anchoring starts with an outlandish position. You state a position or make a demand that's extreme and way outside of what you ultimately expect to achieve, but also way outside of what the other side expects to achieve. And what that does is sets a psychological anchor and influences the other party's expectation of what a reasonable settlement would look like. Then what you do is create a contrast effect. After your extreme opening, your eventual concessions or counteroffers will seem more reasonable by comparison to your initial goal, but they'll be far more favorable to you than you would have gotten otherwise. Make the other party feel like they're getting a better deal than you made them think they were going to get at the beginning. Then, so you're shifting the negotiation frame, anchoring high or low. Now, there are some risks to this, especially when applied to nations. And the risks are something that Donald Trump doesn't seem to either get or perhaps just not care about. And that is, if you're negotiating with the merchant in the marketplace and there's a price tag on something for $100 and you come in and say, I'll give you $10 for that piece of junk, you risk offending him to the point where he throws you out of his store. If that happens, yeah, it's not such a huge deal because there's a lot of other stores and you can just go to the next store down and try again. However, when you're negotiating with nation states, things like this, the offense can often lead to much worse things that will affect lots of people around the globe. It is possible for Trump to do things wrong. It is possible for Trump to overplay his hand. And it is certainly reasonable for intelligent adults to disagree. And if I was sitting with Donald Trump, I would gladly disagree with him to his face. And so if I think that Trump may have overplayed his position on Panama, for example, for various reasons, not the least of which that the President Molino in Panama, the new president there, was excited to work with Trump and wanted to make Panama a closer ally of America. And now he just threw that in the trash. Actually, on this podcast, I didn't come on here in order to disagree with Donald Trump on anything. I came on here to talk about what he has said and why he is saying it. The why is that Donald Trump is very experienced and adept at extreme anchoring. He anchors the conversation way out of bounds in order to pull his opponent toward his position. So will Trump take over Panama and Greenland and Canada and rename the Gulf of Mexico to be the Gulf of America? No, he won't. But I would venture to say he doesn't actually expect to do any of those things. Just like he probably didn't expect to make Mexico pay for the barrier between our countries in his last term. He said, we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. And it freaked Mexico out. And it made Mexico much more willing to play ball with the United States when it came time to try to fix the immigration crisis. And they did. They came around. I voted for Donald Trump. But Trump can certainly do things that are wrong. And don't come here if you expect to come here and just hear a cheerleader for Donald Trump. I'm not that guy. I don't bend my knee. I don't worship any leader but Jesus Christ. I'm a citizen of the United States. I was born there. I have bled for the United States. I have fought and bled for America. And I think I have every right to criticize my leader, whether or not I voted for that guy. The problem he faces as a politician is that he tends to burn bridges. So again, he could have probably, as they say, catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar if he had sat down with President Molino, since President Molino wants to be part of the cool guys club. You've got all these right-wing leaders coming to power across the Western Hemisphere and even in Europe. Because a lot of people are tired of all the craziness from the left. And President Molino of Panama really wanted to join that club. He wanted to be part of that. Well, this certainly didn't help. It might be effective at getting some sort of concession out of Panama. But again, this sets the tone for any eventual negotiation with Panama. He also says that Panama is overcharging the United States or charging the United States more than it charges other countries. That is patently untrue. Panama charges by weight. They don't charge by the country. They charge by the tonnage that is on the ship that is going through the canal. So if he's trying to make the case that the United States should pay less than everybody else, that's going to be a tough case to make. I just don't see the benefit in this. I think it's something that Trump got into his head, and he's just doing what he always does, setting an extreme position to begin with, so that when or if there are some eventual negotiations, he can have that starting point to pull his opponent towards his position. And so I'm not condemning him for that. I think that ultimately Trump's ability to negotiate will be very good for America, much better than Biden's feckless foreign policy. And I think that the reason why he has developed this persona of being bombastic and brash and arrogant and even rude is that it's how he gets business done. He has always treated politics like a business, treats everything like a business. He's a very transactional person, and that's okay. So his confidence and persistence in those, even in his extreme positions, makes them seem less outlandish and more plausible, because he's just like, well, of course, we're going to rename the Gulf of Mexico to be the Gulf of America. Of course, we're going to take over Greenland. Now, the other reason I think that Trump takes these extreme positions is that he knows how to dominate the media cycle. Even though most in the mainstream media absolutely hate Donald Trump because I think they take him far too seriously, his ability to dominate the media cycle and be right on the top of the fold in every paper across the country every day is something of a superpower. It's free publicity for what he wants to say. It allows him to communicate with the entire planet in a way that other presidents can't, or at least won't. His negotiating is as a showman. That theatrical style that he employs makes his extreme positions more palatable because they're simply more expected. All of the craziness is already baked into the cake with Donald Trump.